Hello and welcome. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 30 minutes, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils and lays foundation stones of multiple airport projects worth over 6,100 crore rupees in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the US wants to see Israel scale back some of its strikes in and around Beirut, also pushes for negotiation to allow civilians on both sides to return to their homes. And Moldova votes in a presidential poll as well as a referendum on joining the European Union amid war in neighboring Ukraine. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched multiple development projects in Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. During his visit to his parliamentary constituency, the Prime Minister laid foundation stones of multiple projects worth more than $725 million. He visited an exhibition showcasing airport projects for the region. The PM was accompanied by Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu and Uttar Pradesh's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. After visiting the exhibition, the PM addressed a public rally where he was facilitated by the state's Chief Minister. As part of the 23 initiatives in the city, airport projects include the expansion of airport runway and construction of a new terminal building at the Lal Bahadur Shastri International Airport. Prime Minister Modi also laid the foundation stone of new terminal buildings for Rewa Airport, Ma Mahamaya Airport, Ambikapur and Sarsawa Airport. The PM also inaugurated projects including redevelopment of Varanasi Sports Complex under Khelo India scheme and the Smart City mission. Hostels and a public pavilion at Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar Sports Stadium were also inaugurated. Various tourism initiatives were also part of the inaugurated projects.
साथियों, आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के इस महायज्ञ में हमारे एयरपोर्ट्स, उनकी शानदार इमारतें, आधुनिक से आधुनिक सुविधाएं आज दुनिया भर में चर्चा का विषय है। 2014 में हमारे देश में सिर्फ 70 एयरपोर्ट थे और नायडू जी ने अभी विस्तार से उसका वर्णन किया। आज 150 से ज्यादा एयरपोर्ट है और जो पुराने एयरपोर्ट है हम उन्हें भी रिनोवेट कर रहे हैं। पिछले साल देश में 1 दर्जन से अधिक एयरपोर्ट पर नई सुविधाओं का निर्माण हुआ, मतलब हर महीने एक।
Earlier, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the RJ Sankara Eye Hospital in Varanasi that aims to offer consultations and treatments for various eye conditions. The PM also inspected the facilities to be made available to the people and also attended an exhibition organized at the hospital. He was accompanied by State's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and Governor Anandiben Patel. Other developmental projects include airport, sports and tourism related initiatives. And the Prime Minister also addressed a public gathering in Varanasi after visiting the hospital. Upon his arrival on stage, the PM was felicitated. He was accompanied by the Shankaracharya of the Kachi Mutt that runs the RJ Hospital. And while he was on stage, Prime Minister Modi also distributed spectacles to children. The hospital will benefit people of 20 districts of eastern Uttar Pradesh as well as those living in the border areas of Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the facilities made available to the people of Varanasi.
काशी की पहचान अनंत काल से धर्म और संस्कृति की राजधानी के रूप में रही है। अब काशी यूपी के पूर्वांचल के बड़े आरोग्य केंद्र हेल्थ केयर हब के रूप में भी विख्यात हो रहा है। बीएचयू में ट्रॉमा सेंटर हो, सुपर स्पेशलिटी अस्पताल हो, दीनदयाल उपाध्याय अस्पताल और कबीर चौरा अस्पताल में सुविधाएं बढ़ाना हो, बुजुर्गों के लिए, सरकारी कर्मचारियों के लिए विशेष अस्पताल हो, मेडिकल कॉलेज हो, ऐसे अनेक कार्य काशी में बीते एक दशक में हुए हैं।
Also on the occasion, Jagat Guru Sri Shankaracharya Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal of Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham said that our nation is making great strides and a key factor behind this progress is strong leadership. Praising Prime Minister Modi's leadership, the Shankaracharya said that it's a blessing from God to have good leaders like Prime Minister Modi amongst us and that God is getting various great works done through Prime Minister Modi. He coined an acronym for governance in the time of the NDA government, Narendra Damodar Das Ka Anushasan, a model of governance that is focused on safety, convenience and well-being of citizens. Moldova's incumbent President Maia Sandu voted in the former Soviet Republic's presidential election and a referendum on joining the European Union. The elections are a litmus test of Moldova's pro-European turn under Sandu, who is seeking a second term in a country of 2.6 million people. Polls show she is likely to face Alexander Sotianaglo, a former prosecutor general backed by the traditionally pro-Russian Party of Socialists, if the vote goes to a second round. In Moscow, hundreds of Moldovan residents on Sunday queued outside Moldovan embassy to vote in the presidential election and an EU referendum. The vote comes at a pivotal moment that could bolster the small agricultural economy's drive to join the European Union after allegations of Russian election meddling. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said that the United States would like to see Israel scale back some of its strikes in and around the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Talking to reporters at a G7 defense gathering in the Italian city of Naples, Austin also said that there is a window of opportunity for ceasefire following the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar.
I say the same thing that I said about Gaza and continue to say. The numbers of casualties have been, civilian casualties have been far too high. We'd like to see Israel scale back on some of the strikes that it's taking, especially in and around Beirut. And we'd like to see things transition to some sort of negotiation that would allow civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes. And that's the point that I'll continue to make with Minister Gallant. And I think, yes, he does take on my input.
The Israeli Air Force attacked Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters and an underground weapons workshop in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. The Israeli military also killed 3 Hezbollah militants in separate strikes in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military issued an evacuation warning for civilians living near Beirut buildings it said were affiliated with the Hezbollah. Now, the strikes come a day after a drone attack on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's home. Netanyahu accused the Hezbollah of trying to assassinate him. Israel Defense Forces have released a newly declassified video that shows late Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and his family walking through a tunnel in an unknown location hours before the 7th of October attacks. Sinwar, the mastermind of the Hamas's 7th of October 2023 attack on Israel, was killed on Wednesday in a gunfight with the Israeli forces. Meanwhile, the European Union's Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell at the G7 summit suggested that the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar by Israeli forces could create new opportunities for reaching a ceasefire, release of hostages and pursuing a political solution.
In the Middle East, Lebanon is at that moment the most important and pressing issue. Certainly, after the killing of Yahya Sinwar, a new perspective is open, and we have to use it in order to reach a ceasefire, to release the remaining hostages, and to look for a political perspective.
And US Vice President Kamala Harris reiterated her call for a ceasefire in the West Asian conflict. She added that it was important to seize the opportunity provided by the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar.
Fast forwarding to today, with the killing of Sinwar, this creates an opening that I believe we must take full advantage of to dedicate ourselves to ending this war and bringing the hostages home. As it relates to the issues in the Middle East, and in particular in that region, it has never been easy. But that doesn't mean we give up, okay? It is always going to be difficult. It does not mean we give up. We can't give up.
Germany has arrested a Libyan man on suspicion of planning an attack on the Israeli embassy in Berlin. Authorities said that the suspect has links with the Islamic State. The suspect, identified as Omar A., was arrested from his home. Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser has said that law enforcement were acting with the utmost vigilance to prevent any suspected Islamist, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel violence. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Nobel laureate Professor Paul Michael Roma hails India's digital revolution. Americans in 26 out of 50 states vote early by mail or in person, with just 17 days left for the presidential polls on the 5th of next month. And G7 defense ministers back Ukraine's irreversible path to NATO.
With the constantly changing geopolitical situation and growing challenges in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, India is focusing on self-reliance and modernization.
We signed the contract for 31 Predator drones MQ-9B, out of which 16 will be for the land use and 15 for the sea use, and that is largely for the Navy. This capability certainly is a force multiplier in our effort to monitor our areas of interest. P-75 class of submarines, the last of which is likely to be delivered by end of the year. Then subsequent projects, that is P-75 India and P-76 are moving.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Gautam Roy. Nobel laureate Professor Paul Michael Roma, who's in India, has hailed the country's digital revolution, which was given a huge boost by the Modi government in the last 10 years.
This is what makes the digital revolution in India so interesting, is that it's been used by the government to actually provide benefits to all members of society. It hasn't just created benefits for the lucky few. And this, I think, is very different from most other countries around the world. So I think the success here in India is unique, and other countries can learn from it.
And Professor Roma also said that India's digital revolution story has become an example for the rest of the world.
I think one of the first things is that the other countries in the digital South should say to themselves, if India can do it, we can do it too. Countries need to have the confidence and the ambition to try something that hasn't been tried before, the way India did by creating the Aadhaar number. So other countries could copy and learn from India's experience, but they should also tell themselves, we don't have to depend on the rich countries. We may not even want to let the rich countries be the ones who are in charge, because they may not lead to the kinds of improvements in the quality of life that we really want for our citizens.
And the professor also talked about how the digital revolution in the country has helped people across the nation transcend their financial status as well.
Let me go back to the perspective I had on growth in the very beginning. I was saying, starting in the early 1980s, growth can be faster. Technology can actually improve the quality of life. And I would point to what were then successes, like Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and everyone told me, oh, Paul, those countries are so small that you can't really generalize from that. Then go ahead, 20 years, 15, 20 years, I would say, well, look, China has grown faster than any country in history. And they would say, oh, Paul, China is such a big country that you can't generalize from that. And it's like, well, come on, what is it? Is it helpful to be small, or is it helpful to be big? Or maybe size isn't what really matters. I think that's the answer. What matters is a country which has the capacity to decide what it wants to do and to go where it wants to go. And that's what India did with digital services. They decided how they wanted to do it. They did it, and they've succeeded hugely.
And the Nobel laureate also highlighted the importance of the government in pushing the digital revolution to every nook and corner of India, helping millions and making lives easier for the people.
I think the role of the government is pivotal, and this is the lesson from the Indian success. In the United States, in the West, we've generally had a much more hands-off, kind of laissez-faire market solution, and without the kind of cooperation between the government and the private sector, what we've seen in these other countries is that the digital revolution hasn't generated the benefits that it could have, that many of us first anticipated when these new technologies came on the scene. And this is not a new lesson. Think back to the amazing discovery of the airplane. We didn't get safe air travel because we said, oh, let's just let the market take care of air travel, air safety, or air traffic control. We had government leadership and government innovation and government discovery about how to actually run something as complicated as an air traffic system safely and move people all over the world. So there was a time in the West where we knew how to use the government to create the conditions where then private airlines and other private operators could operate. But we've lost that insight in the digital world. We've just stayed back, and the countries that have succeeded, like India, have been ones where the government went back to that older tradition and said, well, let's do it again.
Okay, now with US presidential elections just 17 days away, early voting has started taking place in 26 of the 50 states, and more are going to begin soon too. Out of these 26 states where early voting has begun, on Saturday, Detroit, Michigan joined in as well. Nevada also began the same on Saturday, whereas Georgia, Pennsylvania and others have already started it. In Nevada, people queued up at polling stations in an enthusiastic manner. Las Vegas voters also joined in, and they raised their issues and expectations about which candidate should win.
Yeah, I voted for Donald Trump, and I think that he's the candidate that would, that is more likely to revive the economy, secure the border, make a real path to citizenship.
I just have to come out and vote for Kamala Harris, if that's okay to say. I just want peace, okay? I just want the values that she holds, okay, they're mine.
It's a big role. Nevada's kind of swing state. It goes back and forth. I think it's real important this year for me as a Republican. We need to swing it back to the red side.
Well, it's important to me to vote, and I always do early voting to make sure that I'm able to vote, because on voting day I have to work. So that's why early voting is important to me.
And former US President Barack Obama was greeted by a sea of supporters in Nevada on Saturday as he rallied for Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee. The campaign coincided with the start of early voting in Nevada. Former President Obama emphasized the importance of voting, acknowledging that this election will be a nail-biter.
We know this election is going to be tight. And it's going to be tight because a lot of Americans are still struggling. What I cannot understand is why anybody would think that Donald Trump will shake things up in a way that is good for you. Because there's absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself.
And Obama took further aim at Donald Trump's behavior, suggesting that some men mistakenly view bullying and belittling others as a sign of strength.
And I've noticed this especially among some men who seem to think Trump's behavior of bullying people or putting them down is somehow macho, sign of strength. I'm telling you, that's not what real strength is. Never has been. Real strength's working hard. Real strength's carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions.
G7 defense ministers have said that all the major democracies support Ukraine's irreversible path to full Euro-Atlantic integration, including NATO membership. The statement issued by the G7 defense ministers after their summit also mentioned that the G7 shall continue to provide assistance to Ukraine, including military assistance in the short and long term in its conflict with Russia. The summit was the first session in the history of G7 dedicated to defense in the ministerial meetings program. Italy holds the 2024 chair of the group, which also includes the US, Canada, Britain, France, Germany and Japan. India's Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Sangba Chuba Ao, in a media briefing has said that Udan RCS scheme is celebrating its 8th anniversary. He spoke about the tremendous success of the scheme as 601 routes have been operationalized so far in the Udan scheme.
If you look at the journey of Udan, as of now, about 1.44 crore people have already flown under the RCS scheme, which is a huge number by any measure. And also 601 routes have been operated under the scheme so far. And today we are at a juncture when we are celebrating the 8th anniversary with all its achievements. The first flight, of course, of Udan took off in April 2017, which was also inaugurated by Honorable Prime Minister, and which connected Shimla to Delhi. And since then, 601 routes have now been operationalized.
Let's now take a quick look at some other stories making news today from around the country. Indian airline Vistara on Sunday confirmed receiving security threats on social media for 6 of its flights operating the same day. These flights include one from Delhi to Frankfurt and another from Singapore to Mumbai, among others. Vistara said that the relevant authorities were immediately notified and security procedures as directed by them have been carried out. A loud explosion occurred near a CRPF school in New Delhi's Rohini on Sunday, prompting swift action by the Delhi police, who evacuated the entire area and registered an FIR under the Explosives Act. Several shops and structures near the explosion site were damaged, but no casualties or injuries have been reported so far. Preparations are underway in Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya to organize the 8th Deepotsav on the 30th of this month, just a day ahead of Diwali. Efforts are on at full swing to break previous records and set a new milestone during this Deepotsav. Meanwhile, the marking work for placing the lamps at Ram Ki Paidi is in its final stage. The target is to light 2.5 million lamps during the event. India's Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports, Dr. Mansukh Mandavia, inaugurated a girls' hostel with 300 beds at the Sports Authority of India Centre in the southern city of Thiruvananthapuram. Mandavia said that with this new hostel, women athletes will get more opportunities. The minister also emphasized that this reflects a significant investment in the future of young women athletes. He also noted that India is targeting a place in the top 10 at the 2036 Olympics. The Sports Minister also inaugurated the National Golf Academy, first of its kind in the southern state of Kerala. The National Golf Academy is equipped with world-class facilities such as a 9-hole international standard golf course, state-of-the-art fitness centre and modern recreational amenities. Now, South Africa is set to clash with New Zealand in the final of the ICC T20 Women's World Cup in Dubai. South Africa secured a convincing 8-wicket win over defending champions Australia in the first semi-final. They are playing in their second successive T20 World Cup. Meanwhile, New Zealand have reached the final after 14 years. They defeated West Indies by 8 runs in a nail-biting semi-final. Both teams will be vying for their first Women's T20 World Cup title. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.